Kia ora, James.
Kia ora.
How are the Greens feeling?
We're feeling really good. You know, we're finishing this parliamentary term with more public support than we started with. Of course, in 2020, we got more support than we did in 2017. So we defied history because we're the only political party, the only support party who, in a term of government, has increased our support. So I think that shows that we've kind of got it right.
What does your billboard mean?
The time is now, ko tēnei te wā. Well, we are out of time. You know, if you, for example, ask the people who in Tāmaki Makaurau lost their homes due to the floods, or in Hawke's Bay, who were displaced by Cyclone Gabrielle, you know, can we continue to kick the can down the road on climate action? They would say no. If you talk to people who are trying to save our native wildernesses and wildlife from extinction, you know, can we continue to kick the can down the road there? And if you're talking to the parents of someone, you know, who they're struggling to put food on the table or pay the power bills at the same time, can we do this incrementally? They would say no. So what we're saying is that actually now is the time to solve those problems, and we have a plan to do that.
We're in the beautiful Mātangi Reia room. What is the party's position on te tiriti?
So we say that, you know, we uphold te tiriti o Waitangi. We put all of our policies through a te tiriti lens before we put them out. I mean, if you look at the promise and the potential of te tiriti o Waitangi, then that would actually create a better country for all of us. And I think this is a point that is continuously lost on our opponents in National and ACT and New Zealand First. The idea of sharing power and sharing space does not mean that you're kind of losing everything. And the thing that makes me so angry about the way that they're communicating right now is that they're saying to people who currently have privilege that if you just share that privilege, then you lose everything. And it's a fear-based narrative, and it's wrong.
How worried are you about this? I mean, this election seems to be quite polarising, more so than others. I mean, for Māori, elections are always triggering.
Yeah.
But this one, what are your thoughts?
More than most. Oh, look, I would agree. And I'm not Māori, but I can completely understand why Māori would be very worried about what's going on at this election. It's not the first time. I mean, you know, if you look back through our history, obviously, but even as recently as 2005, where you had the National Party's iwi Kiwi billboards, you know, saying that those two are different. They're not the same, creating a division between the two. The Orewa speech that Don Brash gave, you know, which led to a huge increase in national support. You can see, again, that's been kind of warmed over for this election campaign as well. And I desperately hope that the country doesn't go down that path.
How do the Greens combat that? What do you do to respond to that?
Primarily by talking up the alternative, right? Which is this idea that actually, if we do embrace te tiriti o Waitangi, if we do actually restore some of the injustice, return land to Māori, and lift people out of poverty and ensure that we've got an inclusive society, then that's going to be good for all of us in so many ways.
As part of its new tiriti policy, the Greens are pushing for law changes to return land to Māori. Given the volatile environment, how wise is that move in the lead up to the election?
There's a few components to it, right? So there's one about ending perpetual leases, which is an outrage, you know, and actually the vast majority of people in this country don't even know about the perpetual leases. When we said that we were going to end perpetual leases on Māori land, it came as a shock to people to learn that there were perpetual leases on Māori land. So that's just a fundamental injustice that we've had absolutely no argument against. We just need to get on and do it. Another piece is around taking land that had been seized under the Public Works Act and returning it to Māori if it's no longer needed for that purpose. And there's quite a lot of land in that. Actually, that is in Crown hands, right? So that's not going to come at any loss to anybody either. And then the third one is about ensuring that the Public Works Act is not used to seize yet more Māori land the way it had been historically. So if people want to take issue with any of those things, that's up to them. But I would say that basically those are fundamental injustices that need to be fixed. And you could argue that it's a red rag to pull in an election year. I would just say it's the right thing to do.
Is that good economically as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing that drives me a bit batty about what I hear over on the right side of politics is they kind of have this cost-based approach, and actually if we focus on lifting people out of poverty, if we focus on having an inclusive society that does uphold mana whenua, for example, then the impact of that is lower costs in health, in education, in a kind of a whole range of domains overall, over a very, very long time. For example, if you take one of the things that we're campaigning on this is that this election is the idea that actually maybe we should have free basic dental services available to every New Zealander, that you get an annual checkup, you get teeth cleaned, you can have basic fillings and so on and so forth. The long-term health benefits of that, in terms of heart disease and diabetes and so on, that disproportionately would support Māori, but it would also mean that overall our health care costs would go down. And so, we're just saying, why don't we look at this as an investment in each other and in our future?
How are you going to pay for that?
So the idea is that we would bring in a wealth tax, which is for people who own more than $2 million worth of assets. We would ask them to pay a small portion of that every year. That would gather enough revenue to cover not just free dental, but also a substantial increase in income support. So what we're saying is that we can actually have an income guarantee for people, that they will never fall below $385 a week. Now, again, this is a political choice. We are one of the only countries in the OECD that does not have a wealth tax or a capital gains tax or a stamp duty or anything in that kind of category where we're looking at taxing capital rather than work. And at the same time, we actually overtax people who work, So, that's what we're saying at this election is we need to restore that balance.
Climate crisis. How far do you think we've come? Because there's still people out there that don't believe it's actually a thing. Have the Green Party dropped the ball in convincing people?
No, we have not. I actually think that we're doing really well. If you look at the pollution that we put into the atmosphere from this country, it has come down now consistently for 3 years. And in the last quarter of last year, the level of pollution that we're putting into the atmosphere is the lowest that it has been this century, so in the last 23 years. That is a huge success because up until we got into government, the levels of pollution just kept going up and up and up and up and up. And when we do public opinion surveys and so on and so forth, we know that the vast majority of the country are very worried about climate change, and if anything, they want the government to do more. There is a small rump of people who are very noisy, who are the same people who are kicking up conspiracy stories and other kind of domains as well, who are kind of have hooked onto the sort of anti-science kind of movement. But it is a tiny group of people.
But how much traction have you had with farmers? That is a big rump of people.
Yes, but just because, again, you have a few voices that have a very high profile who are constantly kind of undermining or being sceptical about, the need for change and so on. Actually, there are farmers all over the country who are very worried about climate change. You have to remember that climate change badly affects farmers. Every time there's a very severe drought, every time there's flooding, if you look at the damage in the Hawke's Bay, for example, I mean, those, orchards and farms were catastrophically impacted by that cyclone, and that cyclone itself was worse because of climate change.
James has faced 2 leadership challenges by delegates concerned about the direction of the party.
Why do you think there's been tension within the Green Party in terms of the activist segment of it with the political segment?
We need people to do both. We need people to do both. As a political party, we are in the political system, right? And I can say after 2 terms in government and a term in opposition before I got into government, that I am absolutely convinced more than ever that the place to be is in Cabinet, at the decision-making table, helping to change laws, helping to direct resources, ensuring that the governmental system is doing the best that it can to resolve those big long-term challenges.
If there's a change of government, then is there potential for the Green Party to work with the government? How would that work?
I can't imagine a possibility in which if National and ACT and New Zealand First got together to form a majority government that the Greens could be a part of that, and nor would they want us to be.
Peace and love! Peace and love!
What do you say to the protesters who gathered outside Parliament to protest against mandates and a number of other issues and feel like they weren't heard, that they were betrayed by the likes of the Greens?
I think they were betrayed, but not by Parliament. They were betrayed by people like Brian Tamaki and other conspiracy theorist leaders and grifters, frankly, who preyed on their insecurities, who preyed on their exclusion. And I would say that in everything that we have done, we worked with the basic principle of what do we need to do to keep New Zealanders safe and healthy, and to prevent the kind of deaths that you saw in other countries around the world.
You had a distressing time too, being attacked around here. How safe do you feel?
Well, I don't walk home at night anymore. But frankly, the level of kind of violent language and, on social media and in other forums that I see directed towards Marama or Golris or the other kind of female MPs, and particularly brown female MPs, is several orders of magnitude worse than anything I have ever faced. There is a misogyny and a racism around that is extremely distressing. And frankly, as a middle-class white man, I don't get exposed to anything like what they get exposed to. And we have to face that head on. We have to deal with it as a society because it is very, very corrosive.
Given the climate crisis, I mean, do you get much sleep at night? Does that keep you awake at night?
The great thing about my job is that, yes, I see all of the data about how bad things are and how bad things are getting, but I also see all the good things, and I see all the stories about how things are changing, and they are changing much more rapidly than I think most people can see or perceive. And so I've got a great deal of hope about the future. And I think for anybody who is kept up at night, and I know a lot of people are, particularly younger people, about the state of things, that making a difference creates hope. Hope is not a passive thing to me, it's an active thing, it's a doing word. And so I think that we're going to get through this, not by kind of resting on our laurels. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take everything we've got. But there is hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, James.
No worries, thank you.
Kia ora.